here. They're just using that to live stream to YouTube.
So can any Joe public join, or they're just watching the YouTube? Okay.
Yep, they're just watching on YouTube. As soon as Charlie gets here or anyone else who's joining, I will lock this chat, and that'll further allow anyone to come in.
Yeah, I heard Zoom is having some security problem.
Yeah.
They are. Yeah, there's a school district that had an unfortunate event using Zoom. So we're trying to take all the safeguards we can to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, we use at MCC, we use a Big Blue Button within our LMS class.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody got some cards? Hey, tell Star I have my cough drops.
Okay, it looks like we're live.
Okay, we are ready. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our April KUSD number 20 board meeting. We want to thank everyone who's been able to join us for our first virtual meeting, so please bear with us. And with that, we're going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. We're going to let Mrs. Dorner lead us in that since she has the flag in her office. Mrs. Dorner?
I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under
God, indivisible, with liberty
And justice for all. That was great. Thank you, everyone.
You're gonna have to shut your door. I'm not gonna be able to hear.
Okay, so we do have 3 of our board members present. Mr. Ricca is not able to join us this evening, nor is Mrs. Young. Is that correct, Mrs. Dorner?
Correct.
Okay, so let's move on to item 4. Our first item is our superintendent report. So Dr. Dorner, if you would go ahead and start.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. There's been a flurry of activity in KUSD, as everyone knows, for the last month. We've sent quite a few letters to the community. We've had every student called in the district multiple times. We have a great appreciation for our teachers and our administrators and the communication. We've worked out a lot of the virtual and distant education at all 3 levels. But this evening, I'd like my board report to focus on graduation, because that is a really important piece of our district's, of our students' lives at this time of year. So this week we met with representatives from both Kingman High and Lee Williams High School to talk about this super important event and the need to carry on with a graduation ceremony of some sort. We did come to the determination as a unanimous decision with all representatives from both schools to do a couple of things. First is to create a virtual ceremony that will be streamed on the evening of May 18th and May 20th, which are the already pre-scheduled dates for graduation. But what we're going to do is really go above and beyond as far as keeping the traditions and the ceremony as it has been in prior years. So those students know that we're going to celebrate them not only at the level that every other graduating class has had, but we're even going to rise above it. So each school has got a tasking list going on right now. We're going to be pre-recording speeches of valedictorian, student body presidents, anybody that would be giving a speech at the graduation will wear their cap and gown and give that speech. And we're going to do it on stage, on the football fields where it would be. And so we're just going to be bringing them in either, one at a time or in a very small group. We'll have the precautions and the social distancing and all of that there. But if I'm the student body president of Kingman High, I'm going to give my graduation speech. I'll be in my cap and gown on the stage, on the football field. It will be video recorded. We're going to have professional photographers take pictures of every student. It'll take us several weeks, several days to rotate all the kids through a couple at a time. But the plan is, for example, to have them come onto the stage in their cap and gown and get their diploma and get a professional picture. And then all of those pictures will be merged together in a video stream. The ringing of the bell ceremony at Lee, some of the honoring of first responders at Kingman High, all of those things will continue. So it's going to be super exciting, even though we won't have a large crowd there because we don't know the state of the pandemic at the end of May. All the pieces will be there and all the students will be celebrated. And there's going to be a lot of activity between now and the end of May to make sure that they feel special. At the same time, we are talking about a potential postponed graduation later in the summer or in the fall for those who would like to come back and experience that piece. The details on that haven't been worked out yet because we're putting a lot of time and energy into the May graduations. So I just want you to know we're on it. We're getting ready to send letters to the parents. We've been on social media. The guidance counselors' offices are communicating with the kids, and it's growing in momentum, and we're super excited about it. We are also going to host the senior awards nights at both schools. There will be pre-recorded messages from the scholarship donors where the recipients are announced, and we'll work with IT on making sure all of this happens. So shout out to everybody, K-12 who's working hard, and then right now our focus on those schools that are going to be producing graduation ceremonies. more info to come on that.
Thank you, Dr. Dorner. Does anyone have any questions for Gretchen on graduation?
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Awesome. And how about, do we have any board reports this evening? Ms. Shumway, Ms.
I
Weiser?
did sign up for the equity webinar for tomorrow. Its focus is on gifted education and providing that the equity for those that require a challenge. So hopefully I'll have more on that after for the next board meeting.
Awesome.
Awesome.
How
I'll be
about
signing
Beth?
up
Do you
for
have
a
any
couple
reports?
too. Yeah. Other than the conferences that are happening online, no, I don't have anything else. Thanks.
Okay. Let's move on to item 5, which is the approval of our consent agenda. So do I have a motion to approve?
I think, Mr. President, members of the board, Mrs. Mareski, the HR director, is going to ask to have one item removed before the vote.
Correct.
Let me make that motion with taking out item C.
Okay.
Is what she was asking for, and
Okay.
make the motion then that we approve it without item C.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the consent agenda, eliminating item C. Do we have a second?
A second.
Second by Ms. Shumway. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Item number 6 is going to be presented by Mr. Sherman. Discuss KUSD number 20, applying for the community eligible provision through the district's food service department.
Mr. President, members of the board, we have next month I'll be bringing the renewal for Chartwells to you, and that'll put them in place, our food service department in place for next year. But as part of that, we're expecting to propose a change, and so that's what I'm bringing before you today for discussion. And so what we want to we want to amend our current plan to include what's known as the community eligible provision. That's commonly known as CEP, so I'll just use that for the rest of it. But what that allows us to do at each school that we're able to apply and qualify and get approval, it allows us to feed every student at the school without charging for anything, as well as without collecting any sort of free and reduced type of information packets. So what it does is it just opens up everybody at that school eating, and they're eating at a percentage of reimbursement based on the need that's associated with the school. So now I've given you a very detailed write-up, and I want to open it up for questions, but just really quick, I could go through what the conservative proposal is. We're proposing that we apply for CEP for 6 of our schools, be in Black Mountain, Surbat, Desert Willow, KMS, La Sanita, and Mount Tipton. We want to leave the remaining schools as traditional for now, because the revenue wouldn't be such that we could actually afford moving to those schools quite yet. We want to talk about reducing one of the district's food service staff over the course of next year, probably into FY22. Also, what this will allow us to do is avoid up to about $63,000 in debt a year, and it allows us to feed a lot of kids without any questions asked on the family's end. And so I know I don't mean to be vague, but I kind of want to open up questions because I did give you a pretty detailed write-up.
Okay, how about questions for Mr. Sherman?
No
I
questions.
had questions about which schools had been chosen, but I think you answered it in what you were just saying, as far as you've done the numbers on each of them, and these are the ones.
Right, and I'd be remiss without saying that Chartwells and Keith, we worked very closely on this, and I used a lot of Keith's expertise in his kitchen and food service for those numbers, but then we worked them up together and made our decision together. And so, yeah, you're kind of walking a line of a percentage, which is currently 57% under the proposal I'm giving you. And that allows us to keep our revenue marginally the same while doing that with that many schools, right? And then, as I detailed in the write-up, we expect need to increase, especially with what's going on in our society right now. And so as need increases, those numbers change, and then we would look to pull more schools in. So that's why those were selected. They were the most financially beneficial. I tried every which way to get Kingman High School into the mix, and it just would not work up till we waited even a week ago to finalize to see if we could get their numbers in.
And does the meal
And
program, is it,
Manzanita-
oh, sorry, go ahead, Jen.
Go ahead. I was just following up with Manzanita and Wallapai. If we kept it that all of the elementaries were in it, those two schools, and not have, say, KMS, because then the middle schools and high schools versus elementary. But
You see, we might have actually
they're
ran that.
still,
Let me take a peek really quick because we may have ran that that idea. No, I don't have one that's like that. Those schools kind of drive percentages down. Right? This is not a free and reduced percentage we're actually looking at. It's more of it's ISP. I'm not quite sure. I can't think of what that stands for, but what it is basically if you're qualifying for any sort of state benefits in your family, that creates the qualification rate. So it's not even a free and reduced. It's more going off of DES information. And Manzanita and Wallapai kind of drive those numbers down.
yeah, that's what I was thinking. I hate to see, I'm glad that we're going to keep adding, because I hate to see us divide the town up in the haves and have-nots with this process.
Right.
I mean, we were going to eventually in the future, hopefully change our boundaries also. And so the sooner we can get them all on the same program, the easier that will be.
We just wouldn't be able to afford it as a district until the numbers work.
Right.
You can't afford it, right? Because that would have been our goal as well, right? To hit all, you want to hit as many as possible to kind of get this food service issue, basically feed everybody and make the debt go away. And so you work from that goal and you work backwards until you find one that you can work with the revenue wise.
So I have one more question, if that's okay. The ones that are not going, the traditional, we can still do the free and reduced for those schools?
Absolutely. Those become just the typical schools. And what it does is you expect debt to go up there as well. You expect to continually incur debt, but now you have a smaller group of people earning that debt, and you can hopefully find ways to mitigate it and keep working on that end.
And Aaron, for anyone
Right.
watching, would you define what you mean by debt? You're talking charges for lunch, right?
Right. Our board, we've all decided, and the board's decided that all children will be fed. So if a child comes through the line and doesn't have money to pay for a meal and doesn't qualify for free and reduced, we feed those kids, and then that becomes debt.
The food service program runs in the black.
Yes.
The debt is incurred through charges, and that's what we're trying to mitigate.
Right, because the charges have to be paid for dollar out of our operational fund. So that becomes out of M&O.
But the free and reduced will remain.
Yes.
And Mr. Sherman, is this something you look at every year that you'll have to reapply for?
Yeah, and you'll want to, right? Because you expect to be able to add schools. And then maybe someday it's a point where you're taking schools off because none of the numbers make sense. But you got to think about it. If your community becomes low need, then you don't go with this thing. As the community is high need, that's when you go CEP. And so as needs increase, CEP becomes that much more beneficial for you. And if you think back to the recession, like 2008, you may remember food service was the only money maker you had. And because of that, that's related to need goes up. Food service is able to fill that need, and the federal government pays for it.
Right.
Sorry.
Thanks, Aaron. Any other questions? This is for discussion only. So any other questions for Mr. Sherman? Okay. Thank you. Item 7 is also, Mr. Sherman, approve the use of cooperative purchasing agreement with Sourcewell.
Mr. President, members of the board, approval here just gives us access to Sourcewell. Sourcewell is more of a nation cooperative agency, so it gives us access to vendors at the national level. We still have to follow all our procurement rules and do our own due diligence, but it gives us access to stay away from big RFPs.
Okay. Do we have a motion for approval?
I'll move to approve.
I will second.
Motion by Ms. Weiser, second by Ms. Shumway. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Item 8 is Mr. Sherman, approve initial year agreement with Enterprise Fleet Management to provide white fleet lease and sales services.
Again, I've provided you guys with some backup information that you can refer to in your board packet. This will need approval to move forward. And I also brought this a couple months ago as part of just a discussion. And so what this is it allows us to update our entire fleet with a lease system. This lease system works such that as you purchase vehicles, you oftentimes sell them off the next year or 2 years later to get the biggest benefit financially, and you turn around and you buy your next piece of white fleet vehicle. And so it just puts us into a program to upgrade something that we've never been able to upgrade fleet-wise for safer vehicles, more cost-efficient vehicles, better gas mileage. And within 7 years, we're actually going to save $30,000 doing it. And $30,000 isn't that much, but the idea that we're going to break even over 7 years and upgrade our entire fleet is why I bring this to you today.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Sherman? Or a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Motion by Ms. Shumway, second by Mrs. Weiser. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Item 9 is Dr. Dorner approves 6 classified employees, all on 12-month 4-day schedules, receiving an additional 4 hours of personal leave. ... Is this Ms. Shumway? Are you, or Ms. Dorner?
Yeah, yes, and
Okay.
Ms. Moreski, if you want to jump in, that's fine. We're just asking to approve the 6 employees. They are 12-month employees on the 4-day schedule. The 4th of July holiday falls on a weekend this year, and in prior years we have promised them not to lose any holidays, and so this additional 4 hours of personal leave makes up for the fact that 4th of July is on the weekend. Anything to add, Mrs. Moreski?
Mr. President and members of the board, so we have most of our 12-month employees work a 4-9 and a 4-hour schedule on Fridays. So they work the 5 days a week. We just have that small group of employees that are 12-month that do not work on Fridays. And so this is just to make it so it's comparable for all the 12-month employees, that they have the same holidays. And since it's only a half a day on Friday that the bulk of the 12-month employees work, that's why the 4 hours is what we're proposing.
Thank you. Any questions or a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve this.
And I'll second it.
We have a motion by Ms. Shumway, second by Ms. Weiser. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Item 10, Mr. Sherman, approve award of IFB number 2009-21 to Pueblo Mechanical to replace one inoperable chiller at KHS. Award is contingent upon SFB funding.
Mr. President, members of the board, as of last week, SFB actually approved this for funding in current year. So approval of this competitive award to Pueblo Mechanical for the amount of $250,000 plus will let us start that process and hopefully have this thing built by the time kids come back next school year.
Awesome.
Yay.
That's very good news.
Well, any questions
I'll
for
make
Ms.
the
Sherman?
motion.
Yes.
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Weiser, second by Ms. Shumway. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Thank you, Mr. Sherman. Item 11, also Mr. Sherman, approve contributions to employee health insurance through Kairos Health Arizona.
Mr. President, members of the board, let me get this document up. I'm having troubles with it. Okay, sorry about that. So at the workshop, I informed the board that premiums went up by 10%, benefits, the offerings, as well as what the district offers, and the benefits as a whole that the companies offer is the same. What's changed are the premiums. And so at the workshop, we talked a bit about employee share of some of those costs. And when I went back a little bit, got these actual numbers for our new benefits, I looked at equalizing all of the costs across the district, basically that we pay the same amount for any type of employee, whether they pick the copay plan or the 5,000 plan. And so when you see our FY20 contributions, as opposed to our current one or next year's, what I'm showing you, you'll see that everybody went up, but people went up by different amounts. And you'll also see that I lowered the HSA contributions on the $1,500 plan as well as the $2,500 plan. And we increased the contributions on the $5,000 plan. And so that employees will feel that hit on their HSA cards, because you can see if the difference in what we're doing right now versus what we're doing next year. But what they won't feel is the full brunt of the 10% increase that we are taking on our side. And so any questions here, it's just approval lets us move forward. And if you have any issue with the contributions, I can take those back and change them up at the board's discretion.
Any questions for Mr. Sherman or a motion?
Last we talked, you were going to start a little bit early and get some quotes from competing companies. Is that still the plan?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've already got it in place that we're going to provide our numbers in November to this other company, our former company, and they'll have a quote back to us prior to Kairos even coming toward us. And we'll look for another company in Arizona if any fit our needs, which are difficult to meet.
Typically when they raise, they don't go back down.
Nope.
So, so if we can at least say that, there's perhaps an out, in the next year or so, it might make it feel a little less painful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. I will make a motion to approve this change of contribution.
So motion by Ms. Shumway, second by Ms. Weiser.
You're approving the use of Kairos next year as our benefits provider, along with the contributions the district will make.
I make a motion to do that.
So we have a motion to approve item 11. Ms. Weiser, you're still good with the second?
Yes.
Okay, so motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Item 12 is Dr. Dorner, first reading of change in policies for expulsion of students.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, this was brought to our attention by the board, I think through the readmittance hearings specifically. If you look at the document in your packet, you notice that the only change in language is the addition of the phrase "or at governing board discretion." So it kind of gives a little bit of latitude to the board instead of saying the end of a semester and 2 full semesters, which is the typical process. It just adds that "or at governing board discretion" so you can have a conversation about it.
Thank you for doing that.
I have a question now. So there's a little blurb at the bottom of the document we got that says, but no less than 9 months.
Right.
But that is not in the language in the actual document. So should it say "or at governing board discretion, but no less than 9 months"? Should that be there as well? Or do we even need to have all of the rest of this, 2 complete semesters, blah, 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 blah. Could it just say no less than 9 months and at governing board discretion?
Yes, it can say whatever you would like it to say. I don't think any of it, just by the phrase at the end or at governing board discretion sort of gives you the leeway to either go with or modify anything prior to that is the way I read it.
Yeah, I don't know, just the editor in me, it looks like it's really muddy, and then it's like, but then ignore all of that because we might completely go off the rails.
Right.
So I just, the language seems superfluous at that point by adding that. Board members?
I mean, I think the piece, I understand what Ms. Shumway is saying. The important piece in there is the board discretion, which we had asked for. So I think we can probably clean that up a little bit for when we approve the policy next month. But I think the intent is correct.
So as the direction I'm hearing to give you a little less of an ambiguous policy where we simply leave it at board discretion?
It says well, we still have to have the no less than 9 months.
Right.
Because we still have to follow ASBA policy, right? So the application for readmittance shall occur no less than 9 months after the date of expulsion and at governing board discretion. So the and says that we could add more, but we can't take less. So the whole thing about the 2 complete semesters, the remainder of the semester, violation, yeah, all of that really doesn't matter then.
Do you want to? I'm going to have Ms. Litzinger, the board secretary.
So if we're going to make any other changes besides what's in the packet, we're going to have to table it.
Right.
Because I got to send another copy to ASBA for review. So that's the first process.
So vote to table it, and then we can change
and then
the language.
You guys can come up with the language, and then I'll resubmit it.
Has ASBA
This is
approved this one?
What, Beth?
Has ASBA approved this one?
Yeah, well, they always have to review any of our changes, and then they will approve it once it's been adopted by the board. And the reason we went with that governing board discretion was because depending on when the kids get expelled, it could be up to 1.5 years that they're expelled, not
Correct.
a year and 1 day.
Yeah.
But it can't be less than 9 months.
Right. But I think that because of the semicolon there, and then it goes on, however, that's clarifying that it has to still be the end of 2 semesters, which is clear versus leaving that out. So like if somebody gets expelled, say in February, instead of going all the way till the end of December the next year, they would just do the 2 semesters, which is more than 9 months.
No, actually, it'd be longer, Beth, because if they get expelled in February, they're going to go all the way to the end of the school year, which is May, and then up another year on top of that.
Not according.
The board has the discretion to change that.
Right, and that's where this would say that we could go to the end of December.
If there were
and that would be 2 semesters, spring semester and fall semester, is all I was referring to.
We can clean it up.
But it would be more than 9 months.
So I'm just trying to think, is there any time that we're going to be like, okay, student, we have the discretion to not to apply the expulsion to this semester versus next. So therefore, and hence then, I don't think we would ever do that. I think we would say you can reapply after 9 months, because to start nitpicking like that would feel very I don't know, discriminatory almost. So
I
I
think
don't
what we
ever
were trying to
see-
do, Ms. Shumway, was get it closer to a year. A year and 1 day, not a year and a half. In the last,
And I remember that discussion, which
have
is
all been
why,
falling within a year and a half.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we can clean it up, and then if you'll table it, we'll clean it up based on your input, and then we'll bring it back. Does that work?
So we'll just have another first reading.
Yeah, that works for us.
thank you.
Yep, thank you for the input.
Any other questions regarding item 12? Item 13 is Dr. Dorner discussion of school closure resolution.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, this was placed on the agenda a couple of weeks ago when we thought we were going to be, at one time, the state was saying it will be up to the schools and the school boards for extended closures, and then the governor went ahead and extended the closure through the end of the year. So we don't need this resolution anymore. What it would have done was given us the ability to do that, but we don't need to do it. So we don't really need to have the discussion on this item at this time.
Okay, that sounds great. Item 14 is to approve the listed donations.
I'll make that motion with
And
our
I will second.
gratitude, especially in this difficult time. There's still donations. That's awesome.
Well, and Kim Patillo, $300. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
So a motion by Ms. Weiser. Jen, was that a second?
Yes, second.
Second by Ms. Shumway. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Item 15 is move to terminate employment of Robert Munsell for reasons stated in the confidential memo to the governing board. And so we'll just entertain a motion for this unless anyone has any questions for Angela.
I move
Go ahead.
that we terminate the employment of Robert Munsell.
I will second.
So motion by Ms. Weiser, second by Ms. Shumway. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 3-0. And we are on our adjournment. I think everyone did awesome.
Mhm.
Big thanks to Robbie and IT for setting this all up for us. And I think making it almost flawless.
Well, and to Rob and all of the IT department, I'm sure they are working nonstop with some of this technology stuff. So thank you.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else
Move
from
to
anyone
adjourn.
before we adjourn?
No, but I want to say thank you to you all. I think this is an awesome opportunity for future meetings when we find ourselves in these kinds of situations. So thank you.
Thank you. So we have Ms. Weiser, were you making a motion to adjourn?
Yes. Motion to adjourn.
And I happen to be making a second while you said that.
And second, Ms. Shumway, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 3-0. We're adjourned. Good night and stay safe, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.